James Cameron joins the First Nations of Canada in response to the tar sands megaprojects. James Cameron is one of the world's foremost underwater explorers. His movie, Avatar, is perhaps the most important film ever made. It embodies a major paradigm shift in global consciousness. In this presentation, delivered in Edmonton on September 29, 2010, Mr. Cameron makes a lifelong commitment to help First Nations mitigate the destructive excesses of the energy industry with their Aboriginal ecological wisdom.
Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank our First Nations leaders who have spoken on the panel. We will have opportunity to hear from more of them in Q&A, but I would like to welcome Jim Cameron up to the podium to share his insights of the last 3 days of his time spent in Cree and Dene territory here in Alberta. So please join me in welcoming James Cameron.
Well, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your attention on these really critical matters. They're critical to all Canadians and certainly absolutely critical here in Alberta. I know that in the media leading up to this trip, I was criticized as an outsider, as a Hollywood guy, and the implication is that I have no standing here. But I think that I'm both an outsider and in a sense and not, and maybe combine the best of both. I grew up in Canada. I grew up on the Niagara Peninsula in a small town about the same size as Fort Chipewyan, and spent my childhood there. And I worked during the summers on my grandfather's farm in Ontario near Orangeville. I grew up close to the land, not as a First Nation person would, not that close, not dependent for hunting and fishing for my livelihood, but I think maybe with a great deal of envy of Native Canadians, because as a child I would have been happy to have lived that life. I think it expresses itself in my work ultimately in Avatar. And I think as an outsider, just enough, in a good way, to be able to come here and see this place with fresh eyes, see it as an outsider, as a citizen of the world, if you will, and to be able to meet with equanimity the First Nation leaders and the scientists, the politicians and the oil industry people, and listen to each one of them very carefully. And what I found was an incredible sense of welcoming, an incredible sense of a gracious hospitality to want to take me in and let me understand their individual kind of bubbles of reality, which do not intersect very much in some cases. And I thought it was fascinating over the last couple of days to see how everybody had their own story that they were eager to tell. Not necessarily defensively, but just wanting the public to understand. And I think the one consensus amongst all these groups was that the public needs to know more about what's going on. And I think that's absolutely true. It's certainly true globally that we need to understand energy better, where it comes from, how we get it, what the true cost of getting that energy is, what the true long-term cost will be to us, to the environment, to our children, and so on. And I think as Albertans, it's going to be incredibly critical for you right here at this real milestone in history to understand this very complicated issue. And you as the media will mediate that. You will hopefully tell the story clearly and without too much name-calling, finger-pointing, and needless controversy. Because what we need is a constructive solution here. I think George referred to the Athabasca tar sands as a curse. And it will be a curse if it's not managed properly. It can also be a great gift to Canada and to Alberta, if it is managed properly. Personally, I believe that this is an incredible resource, and I certainly understand why everybody is stampeding toward it with this desire to exploit it as rapidly as possible, because it's the single largest reserve of potential crude oil next to Saudi Arabia, and in an energy-starved future, that's going to be a piece that's going to really put Canada in a different position and help with energy independence in North America from OPEC oil and all that sort of thing. And so, you know, I'm practical enough and pragmatic enough and taking enough of a global view to understand what the forces are, what the powerful economic forces are that are driving this development. But on the other hand, I think that what is critical here is for everyone to really take a look at what the fallout from all this is and what it could be, because we're only at the beginning of it. Only 2 or 3% of the tar sands deposits are currently being mined. So imagine what that could look like going forward. Just to put it in perspective, it's 602 square kilometers that are being surface mined right now, of which 170 square kilometers is tailings ponds. That's a small part of the 4,800 square kilometers that can be surface mined. And of course, surface mining is attractive because it's less energy intensive. So the amount of energy going in relative to the amount you get out in the form of the oil is a lower ratio. So that's beneficial, it's economic and so on, and it's relatively easy to just scrape off the overburden of rock and soil and get down to the tar sands and cart it all away and process it, compared to the more sophisticated processes that are coming in now, like SAGD and some of the variations of in situ processing. And I got a very, very good download from the Cenovus people yesterday out at their site at Christina Lake, and you know, there's some very interesting technology there. But let's face it, you're talking about 8 times the amount that's currently open pit being surface mined, and the consequences of that. Every one of those mining operations is going to require a tailings pond, and you know, there's some facts that I think people need to understand. That reclamation is possible. It's being demonstrated. It's very expensive. It's been budgeted in the forward projections of the oil companies that do the open pit mining. I saw a demonstration of it yesterday at Syncrude. It was quite a good tour. What I saw was you know, kind of the beginnings of a reconstituted you know, surface forest, but of course it's many years away from maturity, many years away from being what it was, and it's a very tiny patch of land compared to the part that's still all open pit. And you know, we're 40 years into a process right now, and it's only been the last couple of years that they can even point at an area that's been reclaimed. I'm not being critical of that. I know they're spending a lot of money on reclamation. I think they need to be encouraged publicly to do that, but I don't think it's been demonstrated on a scale enough yet to show that it's even economically viable to them at this point, because they're dumping in, you know, some 10 times the amount of money into reclaiming these test projects to what they have budgeted long term to do the vast area. So essentially, they're kind of allowed to proceed on a promise that they will make good down the line, probably after you know, some of us are already dead. Our children